Good evening, everyone, and welcome to TriVersity Talk. I am Stephen Bloomer T.
And I am Wendy Stewart Kaplan, and it's that time again, 7 o'clock Sunday night, and have we got a great show tonight?
Absolutely. But before we talk about our guests, let's do our usual beginning spiel. Whether you're watching this from Facebook or YouTube, welcome. If you are on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to us. We would be ever so appreciative. And we definitely appreciate all the likes and loves on Facebook.
We love to be loved.
Yes, we love to be loved. It's just, that's life,
That's how
I guess.
we are.
So with that, we are very excited to have Chris and Jesse Brune-Horan onto the show tonight. And one of the issues we're going to talk about is adoption and fostering, as an LGBTQ couple. And
as more and more couples are
absolutely
adopting kids, and it's got its challenges, it's got its joys, like being any kind of parent, right?
Absolutely. So with that, let's preface to say, Chris and Jesse have two adorable sons, and they might have to run off and take care of those two adoring sons through the interview. So at various times, we may have both of them, or we may have one of them.
Because children are demanding.
Indeed. So welcome, everyone, Jesse and Christopher Brune-Horan.
Hi.
Hey guys.
Great.
Yes, we're going to keep it very real today. So
we like you here.
we have toddlers in the house, so we never know what might happen.
That's true. We have a 2-year-old and we have a 4-year-old, and they just woke up from naps. We're on Los Angeles time, so we're 3 hours obviously behind you. So at any moment they'll walk into the room, and you'll know when they're in the room for sure.
And they slept, so they're all filled with energy. Isn't that?
Yeah, they're ready for phase 2.
Yeah. They had a California day. They went swimming earlier, and then they had lunch, and now they're doing their naps for sure.
So you have a whole structure, of course, for the kids, right?
Yeah. We like to think so.
Well, it's not a structure so much as it is a goal of just keeping them active, getting them exercise. And that has been sort of the pandemic plan, is what are we going to do for the kids?
Okay.
How are they going to get exercise? How are we going to get the energy out? This is one of them. This is our oldest. This is Tony.
This is Tony.
Hello.
Say hi. Can you say hi?
Hi.
Tony,
Hi, everybody's watching you. You're very handsome. Nice to meet you too.
Let me tell you a couple things about Tony. Tony is brilliant, and he's hilarious, and he's really good at building things. Cool. And his teachers at school call him the engineer because he loves to build things and take things apart. And he's super fast, and he's funny. What else cool things are you?
Shy.
Hardly. He's quite a charmer. He's getting more and more confident.
He is. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna run him to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay. Yeah.
But I will say, like, one of the perks of being a gay dad and having grown up when I did, when you couldn't really come out of the closet. I didn't feel comfortable coming out of the closet until, well, I came out early. Really, I came out when I was 16. I was 16 when I came out.
Oh yeah, that is. Yeah.
That's pretty early, especially because it was the 90s. But I just really value, one of my main values in parenting is just letting them know their worth and their value from the get-go. So they don't have to question it, So I constantly affirm to them all of the attributes that I want them to really, because I truly believe if you believe it, then you experience it as such, and the world meets you there, right?
So you're really building self-esteem in these kids.
I mean,
early age.
Before we go to bed, every night I have a ritual with Tony. I read him a story, and then as I'm tucking into bed, I go, "Do you want to hear a couple reasons why I think you're really cool?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, and then I just list all of the things. I'm like, "You're so smart, and you're so kind, and you really, you take care of the people around you. And I just really tell him, like, every night, because I'm like, that kid is gonna know who he is, no matter what. And it's a real commitment. It's that whole thing of you want to give to them what you didn't necessarily get. And I had loving parents, but they didn't know the power of that, specifically. And I was listening to a lecture the other day by one of my favorite teachers, and he was talking about how he practices the platinum rule, which is even more on top of his list than the golden rule. So the golden rule is treat others as you would have them treat you, right? Yes. But the platinum rule is treat yourself as you would have other people treat you. And I was like, that's fabulous, because that really is where it begins. And if you explore your own inner dialogue, it can be so gnarly sometimes. So if we can give them the habit, the tools of just building themselves up internally, then I'm like, the world's their oyster, right? So just having that as a foundation
is everything, but also making them aware of other people, which, like you said, you grew up in the 90s. There wasn't so much of that awareness. Everything was very self. A lot of I won't say all millennials, but there are kids of the millennial generation that are very self-oriented. To be raising a kid and make them aware of other people and how you're treating them. I mean, come on, we know adults that don't know how to treat people correctly. So you're giving them the foundation.
Well, we talk a lot about kindness versus being nice, because I feel like nice is not something that's high on my priority list for my kids to be, but kind is really important. And one thing actually that the pandemic has given us the opportunity to do is make them aware of the people around them. And because, right now it's important that you sort of honor the space that people want. And so you have to just be really aware of the world around you. And so that's become sort of a mantra I've been using when I'm out with them in public, is be aware of the world around you, look around you, remember you're sharing the world, And so they're just aware of that. And then being part of the LGBTQ community, because Chris and I are both active in our community, we're community leaders, that people of color, there's nothing odd or unique about that. Trans people of color, there's nothing unique about that. It's just part of their normal daily routine. And so I love that that's a normalized thing. So it's not like shocking or strange or anything like that. And these are people that aren't only in our world, they're our friends. They're part of our community structure. These are people that have supported us, uplifted us, been very present in the kids' lives. And so they really get to see and value just life, human life, and to be able to transcend that. And then, that brings on a whole conversation because of what we know about gender identity and things like that. We allow them to explore so much more. So like the other day, my little one, he's 2.5, he loves drag queens. He loves RuPaul's Drag Race. He does, but he has so much energy that our friends gave us this little mini trampoline. So he'll just bounce on the trampoline and he'll watch performances from RuPaul's Drag Race. He'll watch performances from he loves Katy Perry. And he loves to put on a wig or put on a cape or he has this really beautiful silk kimono. I have no idea where it came from. I'm like, where did that
Did he go shopping?
But it has tassels. I'm like, that's really beautiful. And I thought my sister gave it to him. She's like, I didn't give him that. So he'll be jumping and he'll have a wig on and the kimono. He's walking drag queens. And I had this one moment where I thought, am I pushing gay on this kid? And I realized, I was like, wow, that's my own internalized homophobia. As if there was something bad about that. I'm like, this is the family he's growing up in. And this is some part of our cultural makeup in this family. That's beautiful. And we should celebrate it. It should be something wonderful. And we're not pushing anything on him. We're allowing these kids to explore everything. And quickly, if you have the kid, the little wanting to wear a dress and all that stuff, you think, oh, is he gay? Is he whatever? But maybe not. It doesn't matter. We're allowing them to find unique ways of expressing themselves, authentic ways of expressing themselves, without having to label it as anything.
I mean, it seems like, and this might not be universally true, but the more freedom of expression you give kids, the more fluid you realize that gender may be, that none of us fall into it.
That's really a good point.
Exactly. Like you realize how many of those ideas were just pushed on us. Like, oh no, that's for boys. Oh no, that's for girls. Like, says who? Like it's really crazy.
Don't you think though a lot of it's got to do, I'm listening to the kind of community that you're in, and I'm thinking about, we're in the year 2020. If you think back to the 90s or even the early aughts, would it have been, would you be sitting here and being able to say that? You know what I'm saying? You have a great community around you.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people in the same situation. So you have 100% support. I think don't you think it was more challenging, say like 10, 15 years ago?
Well, I think that there just weren't as many resources because, obviously we're evolving as a culture. And I think that things like RuPaul's Drag Race is really valuable in helping usher that in, and Queer Eye and all of those things. People
hour at the library.
Or what? Yeah, exactly. Or Orange is the New Black. Having like prominent trans characters, like just having that conversation. The media is really important. Representation is really helpful when it comes to things like that. So I think the conversation is more there. And listen, I live in Los Angeles. I was for 10 years the spiritual director of a LGBTQ spiritual community. And so it was my job to be active on, my husband and I both worked on the LGBTQ advisory council for the LA Sheriff's Department. My husband works in the jails, Men's Central Jail, on the gay floor. We're very active in, and we educate ourselves, but it's important that we really want to make sure that we're always growing, we're always evolving as human beings, and then as husbands, and then as parents. And so I think we have that in us initially, like that's just sort of there. So it makes us, it makes us remain curious. And because we are, I looked at him one day, I was like, it just dawned on me that we're like artists and philosophers. Like this is just sort of what it looks like these days. Like, you have this sort of like fantasy of it looking like Rent, but it doesn't, and like it's not. For us, it's diapers and it's school and it's all of those things. And I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent. You're gonna have to.
You're cool. I have a question. When did you realize? First of all, how long have you guys been together, and when did you realize that you wanted to adopt kids?
Oh, before I married my husband, like
it's been.
God bless him. Sometimes I feel like he's come along for the ride. I told him, he jokes about it on our first date. I said, how do you feel about marriage and kids? Because I wasn't playing. Like I knew that I personally always knew that marriage was going to be a part of my experience and kids was going to be part of my experience. It's beautiful. The fantasy is always beautiful. When you actually get in it, you're living it, you're like, Jesus, I didn't know this was it, but okay. And my husband will jokingly look at me sometimes after like the kids have just like beat me down for the day, or I yelled at a child or something, and like I'm just like crawling into bed. My husband will look at me, he goes, "This is it. This is what you wanted. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it great?" And yeah. But so I always knew Chris. I think he was open to. He never really thought about it until I kind of positioned it, proposed it. I proposed to him.
Over, I'll tell him all.
Yeah.
Wait, what did he say? What did he yell?
Because when I take over, I'll tell him my side of the story. But yeah, so I was definitely the sort of I don't want to say pushy, but I was the one that started to explore the different ways of building our family. And we both knew we wanted to go the adoption route. There was never any like feeling of getting a surrogate or anything like that.
A lot of people, especially California, when they first started surrogacy, was one of those places. Is that even a word? I think surrogacy. Yeah. Okay, is one of the places that people would go to get surrogates. So I was wondering if you had thought about doing that.
No, I think we both really got. My husband and I are both sober. And so I think service is just sort of part of our DNA a little bit. And not that we don't feel like it's a service. Like we're not patting ourselves on the back. But we knew that there were kids that needed homes out there. And so we wanted to explore that. And like so many miracles in Los Angeles, I was teaching a spin class. And one of my students, after spin class, came to me and said, listen, I'm a social worker and I work for an organization and we're looking to team up with more LGBT families that are interested in adoption. If you know anyone or an organization.
Oh, wow.
And so I went home. I was like, Chris, guess what? Took care of that. And he's like, oh, already? I'm like, now.
Done.
But I think what Chris really helps helps us like go at a slower pace, really think about it, do it when it's the right time, because I'll rush into stuff and sometimes it's not the right time. So he really sort of balances us out in that way. And so what we did is we started, I didn't even know foster to adopt was a thing. And even while we were in the middle of the foster to adopt process, I didn't know all the ins and outs of it. So it was a real crash course while doing it. What I did know was, as we explored it, like it can be really expensive. And if you are, most times if you're adopting and you'd like to have an infant, which was something that I wanted to have the experience of raising an infant. So a lot of times when that comes to adoption, you work with the birth mother before she gives birth. And as part of that agreement, you take care of her medical expenses, often her living expenses and things like that, until she gives birth. But she is under no legal obligation to give you the baby. After
I met that with Stephen. I have a friend that went through that program, and in a way it was so cruel because it was like every 6 weeks she used to have to drive to the birth mother's house with the child, with the social worker there, and then the mother could say if she, changed her mind or not. And in this case, the baby was born addicted to drugs, right? But if the mother had said, I want this child back, my girlfriend, who was very attached, of course, that's what happened, would have had to give that baby back. And I thought, oh my God, how do you do that? And so did you have a similar experience where the birth mother could change her mind at a moment's notice?
Well, what we came to learn was that we didn't have really any rights whatsoever as foster parents. None. I mean, and I get it now. Like it really is an act of service, and you're not even at the top of the list to adopt the child. Reunification is a really big priority for the courts. So if there is any family member capable and willing to take the children, they will find a way to get the child in their home if the biological parents aren't on the path to take the kids back. And so they have a lot of opportunities. Now, if you're working with children who are under the age of 3, they will fast track this process to the extent that they can, because they understand how important these developmental years are for the children, and they want stability for these kids. Now, our first child was born exposed to drugs. We don't know if he was addicted, but he was born exposed to drugs. He was removed from his biological mother, at the hospital. She already had 6 children in foster care that had been adopted. So this was her 7th child. We brought him home 2 days after he was born, and we were taking care of him. And it didn't look like she was going to be able to step up at all. And so we were on the track to adopt. And we had just started going through the course to start finalizing the process of adoption when our son got sick and he passed away unexpectedly. How
old was your son when he passed?
He was 7.5 months.
And you had this baby from when he was how old?
2 days. He was 2 days old.
I cannot even imagine what that had to be like. I mean,
it was a nightmare. I mean, he was. It was an undiagnosed disease. No one knew he had it. He got the stomach virus, and we took him to the doctor. They sent us home. They said keep him in fluids. We went to urgent care. They sent us home. You want some more? Go get Daddy. Daddy's gonna get you some more.
I got you right here. I'm helping.
And then I went to the emergency room. They sent us home. They're like, this baby just wants his daddies. Just give him fluids. And then 2 days later, he wouldn't sleep. And I just finally took him to the ER. I was like, you have to see this child. Something is up here. And 2 hours later, he went into cardiac arrest in my arms. He just started. I noticed him. He was doing this weird breathing and the nurse was in there. I was like, why is he breathing like that? And then all of a sudden, the room was just full of people. And I called Chris, and he left work. He walked out of work. He was there in like 15 minutes, and for the next 2.5 hours, they just tried to save his life, and they just couldn't. And I've processed this to such an unreal extent that is probably why I'm not more emotional than I am. But it was just this feeling of powerlessness, this feeling of out of control, like you leave your body, you're just sort of observing all of it. And I just remember having to call my mom. The thing that just killed me the most was I had to call my mom, and she came to the hospital to see his body before they gave us a room. They gave us 2 rooms after he had passed, and they wrapped him in a blanket and they handed him to us. And they're like, you should say goodbye. This
wow.
is hard. And, we just were in shock, and we had to call our friends and our family. And I just remember my mom came, and she lost her balance. She just fell because she just couldn't believe what was happening. We were all just in shock.
I mean,
yeah.
Thinking back on this, at the time, I mean, Chris was my husband Richard's childhood best friend. So I mean, Jesse married Richard and I. So we're very close despite being so far away. And I just remember I was about to go to South Carolina to see my mother, who had stage 4 lung cancer. And we got this news, and Richard ended up going to the airport with me to go to California. And I just remember just the air leaving. It felt like the entire house when we heard that. It's just
surreal. It's absolutely surreal. And I had heard Chris talk about this when we did the storytelling, and he told this story, and it completely breaks me up. And I'm looking at you and your resiliency because you processed through it, and then you went and did it again.
Well, one of my mentors told me to build an altar for him, for Caden. And for the next 40 days, you put something on the altar to represent a life milestone that he wasn't going to experience. And so for the next 40 days, we did it, my family did it, and our friends did. They'd come by, and like my mom just killed me. My mom brought like a little stocking to represent Christmases, and I created a little high school diploma, and I put it on the altar, and we just did different little things. And in a way, it really helped us process what was happening. And the challenging thing was on the 40th day, we didn't want to take the altar down. We didn't want to let him go. But we did. And it was about 6 months. It was about 6 months later that we got a call from our social worker. And she said right off the bat, she goes, it's too soon. I know this is too soon, but there's a special case, and I just want to tell you about it. And it turned out to be the case of our sons. And it was a very dark, very awful case. It involved violence against an infant, a 5-week-old infant. He showed up to the emergency room with 15 broken bones at 5 weeks old. So just let that sit for a second. And so he was recovering in the hospital, and they needed to discharge him. And so when you do the foster to adopt process and you want an infant, the only way you're going to get an infant through foster to adopt is if you sign up for something called emergency placement, meaning you get a call at 3 p.m. and there's a baby in your home at 6 p.m. So you have to be good to go then and there.
Be ready to go. Diapers, ready. Formula.
Yeah.
Well, this is one thing. The day that our son passed away, we walked out of the hospital and we just looked at each other and we're like, what did we do now? And I just remember my sister, she took the baby carriage out of my hand because she didn't want me to have to go to the car with an empty baby carriage. And so she just took it. She's like, I'm just going to take that. And Chris and I just sat there. We're like, what do we do? And my inclination was, I can't go home. I don't want to see the nursery. I don't want to do that. And Chris was like, call everybody. Do the opposite. And that's what we did. We called everyone. And this is one, talk about like
community,
being grateful to be gay in that moment, because, you know, we have our chosen family as well. And our house within an hour was full of people, and they just brought food and flowers, and we all cried together. We prayed together. We laughed together. We just sat in silence. Everyone was just like, I don't know how to, whatever. But let me tell you, that community, they took care of everything. They took care of our memorial service. They got us a place last minute. They just took care of everything. And so when
through it, they helped get you through it.
Yeah.
And the day that, you know, I got a call about Victor, you know, that there was this baby that needed a place, and I called Chris and we decided to do it. Again, the community showed up. There was diapers delivered, there was food delivered, there was everything that we need delivered, so we could just be prepared. And, you know, looking back, probably too soon, but, you know, what I realized was, as we were helping this baby heal, this baby was helping us heal very much.
It really is exactly what's happening. That is just exactly what happened.
Now,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, originally it was just Victor. That was the emergency placement. So when did Tony come into the picture?
Well,
here's the bait and switch.
we
bait and switch.
Well, it was like Jesse said, exactly. They called us. They called us a couple times though. They said to us, you know, they said, you know, when you're ready, let us know. And we weren't ready. And then there were a couple times they just ran things by us. And then they did call, and they were like, I remember they were talking to Jesse, and then they asked me, and I kept saying no. And then one day I said, maybe if there was a boy, maybe if there was an infant boy. I just said that to Jesse, and more just kind of talking to him, because Caden had been a boy. And I said, you know, maybe if there was a boy. And then within like 2 weeks, we got this call, and they were like, there's this infant boy, and was brought to the hospital at 5 weeks old with all these horrible injuries. He's getting out of the hospital now. He's 8 weeks old. He has nowhere to go. And there was just something about being told that there's a baby who has nowhere to go. And we agreed. At the time, they told us that he had a 2-year-old brother, and that his brother was in another foster home. Just because of everything that we've been through in the system, we knew that we were talking about 2 kids, even though they didn't say that to us, because we knew they were going to want to keep them together, and we knew they should be kept together. And so even though no one said it to us at first, we knew that it was going to be, that they were going to. Well, and they did within like days.
And let me tell you, ignorance is bliss, because I thought, I'm like, well, how hard could a 2-year-old be? I mean, we've done an infant. Like, it will be easy. We can do 2. It's fine.
Oh my gosh, 2 is like
it's so much harder.
It's much
like
different.
So much harder.
Yeah.
And because of the specifics of this case, we literally had an appointment every single day. I literally had to step back from my work. I kind of quit my job just to focus on this, because, and I mean, every single day there was analysis, there was,
say hi?
You know, there was checkups, there was
Say
analysis, there was doctor, there was psychologist, there was all of these things.
And this is that little baby now. This is Victor.
Yeah.
Hey, Victor.
Say hi. Can you wave? Can you say hi?
He's so big.
Yeah, he is definitely big, right?
Oh my God, what a beautiful family you have.
I'm gonna let you take
We
over.
think they're pretty beautiful. Chris wants to take over, but I will say that it was nice. You know, what was really challenging about this specific experience is that the biological parents wanted the kids back, and they fought for them. And so once a week, you know, we had to bring the kids to them, and so it was like giving them back to the place that
had harmed them. The parents harmed them. Children.
And this is where, like, some of the system just didn't make sense. I was like, tell me how this makes sense. None of this makes sense. And I mean, you know, the kids, trauma is a real thing. And then there were elements of trauma that began to surface in Tony, who the 2-year-old. And so eventually the parent visits became less because he wasn't able to cope. And then eventually the parents were arrested. But during that time, it was court cases. It was going to court. It was going to parent visits. It was going to the doctors and then other doctors and other doctors. Victor had so many doctor's appointments. It blew my mind. I knew the children's hospital back and forth because it was like the bone doctor, the ear, nose, and throat doctor, the kidney doctor. And then that was the other thing is Victor started getting chronic urinary tract infections to where he had to go to the hospital, be hospitalized twice because of them. But I was going to the emergency, the urgent care once a month because he had a urinary tract infection and he eventually had to get a procedure done. So I had to start meeting with the kidney doctor and all this stuff. And I was just like, this is too much. And
Jesse, I'm going to ask a really hard question.
Yeah.
Did you ever have regrets while you were going through all this?
Regrets is the wrong word. Doubts that we could pull it off were definitely there.
Because it's overwhelming what you're describing. You're not only of your lives, adoption in general, right? Your life can be turned inside out and upside down. Mm-hmm. But now you've got kids that have physical issues, right? And your work gets disrupted, so your income gets disrupted. You're at the hospital all the time. So your life that you and Chris had built with each other is now it's now crazy.
It's just we were just parenting. I mean, we were just parenting.
Right.
And then that whole element of the foster family, the foster parents really don't have a voice at all until you do. Like they weren't in the courts and everything. They weren't interested in what we had to say. They just were not interested. They did because it wasn't about us. It was all about the biological parents and what's going to happen there.
But it's not about the kids. It should be about the kids.
Well, and I mean, trying to remember this, did they attempt to blame the injuries of Victor on Tony? Is that how
one of them, yeah. And that in 90% of child abuse cases, the parents try to blame a sibling. And what's really interesting, I mean, we've learned a lot about court cases. You know, almost every time with child abuse, there's never a sentence. Like they don't get sentenced because the people that would testify, the witness, too young to testify, you know. So charges are usually dropped when it comes to child abuse.
Until you read about it in the newspaper and the child is killed. And that
on the other side of it too, which is something that like I had to like take a step back and really like understand is that the lawyer that represented the boys was an angel. Like the only word I can have for her. She was just a warrior angel, but she was also she's a real advocate for Latin families because there's in California, Southern California, there's a lot of Latino families, and there's a lot of Latino families that get really screwed by the system because they don't know how to stand up for their rights, and because they have undocumented family members, they're scared of deportation, they're scared of all these things, and so they don't stand up and say what they need to say, and sometimes their children get taken away from them when they shouldn't have been, you know. And so she really reminded me of that. Like we don't take, you know, our case was a very special case, and she had to really do a lot of soul searching to push for termination of parental rights, because that's what it was up to her to push for that if it was going to happen. And so she goes, I had to have a real coming to God because she was Latina. And she's like, I'm an advocate for Latino families, you know, and I've seen them be just brutalized by the system. And so I really am here to help them. She goes, and so I really needed to like have a coming to God about this. She goes, but then I looked at it, and after the fact, after the adoption papers were signed, she goes, you know, I couldn't tell you this during it. She goes, this was the worst case of child abuse I had ever seen. She goes, the two of the leading experts in child abuse wrote reports on this case, one of which was 80 pages long. And they came to testify in court. And you know what? like all the characters, it could have been a TV movie. Like all the characters, like there was a slimy lawyer that just wanted to win. And we were like, oh God, gross! Like the things that they tried to pull just so they could win, and it was like there's nothing about the kids involved in that, because you can't look at that police report and say, oh, you know what? Let's get them back. They should be back with their parents. There's nothing.
People have a conscience even. Didn't you like say to yourself, my God, you know? And here you are, you basically don't have any rights. You're at the beck and call of everybody else.
I will say something. Like I want to say something about this because I was listening to it all, and it is without a doubt, like there is nothing worse. I mean, I shouldn't say there's nothing worse, but it's one of the worst things on the planet is child abuse. I mean, it's just the worst, the absolute worst. I remember when we got the call, I remember my first thought was Jesse was asking me, did we want to do this? And I remember thinking like, this is dark in a way that when we first got the call about Caden, we knew that there were drugs involved, but there wasn't anything like this. You know, we're both sober. We understand like drug addiction is a disease, and we understand that. And child abuse, we had no experience with this whatsoever. And immediately it felt like, okay, this is a darkness that I don't understand. But we knew we were capable. We knew that like we could take care of these kids. And when Victor came into the house, like he was 8 weeks old. He had been in the hospital for 3 weeks. He was just getting out of the hospital. We would like wake up, like it was like if a feather hit the floor, we would wake up. We would hear him, and we would go in and we would make sure he was okay. And we're not saints. What we had been through with Caden, we knew that like, okay, we're up for this job. We can do this, you know? And one thing I remember, like when Jesse was talking and he asked me on our first date, he said to me, how do you feel about marriage and kids? And I remember I always laugh, and I remember like pretending I didn't hear him for a second to sort of like,
what?
I was kind of like, get him, like who asked that on a first date? But I knew he was quality, and I knew that he was asking because he wanted that for himself. And, you know, maybe we would progress if I said no, but it wouldn't be a serious relationship. And so no one had ever asked me that before. I'm older than Jesse. I'm the same age as Steven's husband, Richard. We grew up together. We're best friends. No one had ever asked me that. Like having children, it never even felt like an option for me. And when I met Jesse, it was right around the time that Prop 8, Jesse's gonna get up.
Yeah, I'm tapping out. But you'll come back. I'll be back.
Bye, Jesse.
Bye, Jesse.
It was when I met Jesse, it was right around the time that Prop 8 was being lifted in Los Angeles.
Wow.
In fact, while we were engaged, Prop 8 was lifted. And it was really exciting for us because we realized, oh, our wedding, it was always going to be real, but now it's going to be legal. And we had our families coming from Seattle and from New York, and you know, you guys, and just like everybody came out, and it really was this sort of it was one of the first weddings that was a legal wedding for a lot of our friends because Prop 8 had just been lifted. But I remember when he said to me, how do you feel about marriage and kids? I had no idea. Like, I just was like, no one's ever asked me that before. Marriage sounded really good to me. I'd always strived for monogamy, you know.
It's a whole other thing,
Yes,
you know?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I strived for monogamy. I didn't always able to master it, but I knew that was something I wanted. Children, I just didn't even know. The only thing I knew was that I didn't want to have my own. That if we were going to do it, I would want to help a pre-existing child. And that is one thing I want to say about this, because I mean, I'm sure we're on basically because we're gay parents, and everything that Jesse touched on, I believe 100%. But I have to say, like, the way we did this, doing this way, the foster to adopt, I can't recommend it enough. It's not for everyone. It's very hard not knowing whether or not you're going to be able to adopt the child you're taking care of. If you really want to adopt, while you're fostering and not knowing if that's going to happen, that can be very hard.
It's very emotionally hard, Chris. Very emotionally hard.
It's very hard. And with Caden, it was more up in the air than with these boys because of what had happened with these boys. It always looked like we were going to be able to adopt them. It wasn't for sure going to happen. You know, there were relatives that came forward. There were visits with relatives. There were all kinds of things that happened. But it was leaning in that direction. Again, though, I know it's not for everyone because of the emotional investment, but there are so many kids out there. Like, I could get really emotional. Like, there's so many kids out there. Like, these are the best kids. And all kids are the best kids. You just need love, you know?
30,000 kids in Los Angeles County. 30,000 kids in the foster care system in Los Angeles County looking for homes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's so many kids, and if you have the resources, meaning like you have a home, you have a roof over your head, there's all kinds of ways that you get help from the state and social workers. People were always coming and stopping by once a week, once a month to make sure that we were okay, they were okay. I mean, obviously they're checking to make sure the boys are safe, but we had access to anything we wanted, any kind of therapy that Victor needed, that Tony needed, any kind of doctor's visit. So we were able to, you know, love these boys. So they've turned into these amazing kids because they, not even because of us. So I can't, you know, I recommend it, especially to gay parents, because I know that like people spend lots and lots of money to have their own kid, you know?
Absolutely. But something to be said here. I mean, there's a Supreme Court case coming on about this. It's not always an option for gay parents. And something in Philadelphia, there's a Supreme Court for an agency's right to deny gay parents foster children. So
this has come up, and it's totally awful because you just brought out the fact 30,000 kids in the LA area alone, right? They are in foster care. They could use homes. You brought out a really good point, Chris, and for anyone that's listening, that they will get the support of the agencies in terms of, you know, checking in on the kids, making sure that you have everything you need. And so you have the support there, and you of course have the support of the LGBTQ community. So it really is a win-win all the way around for everybody, for the children and for the parents.
It's been an amazing experience. If you had told me even 6 years ago that this was going to be my life, that I was going to have if you had told me I was going to be confined with them inside during COVID.
Well, that's a biggie, right? The pandemic and small children.
It really was crazy. I mean, now it's lifting a little bit. Like they're able to. We're very fortunate. They're able to go to preschool. There's tons of restrictions.
Let me tell you about COVID with kids.
No, I want you to talk about that.
Yeah,
no, it was so intense, especially in the beginning. It was so because there was nowhere to take them. There was nothing to do, and we have a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah,
they started hurting themselves because they had so much energy. They literally, and this is literal, started running into. We had our first case of stitches because someone ran into the wall.
Wow,
so nuts. We were looking for, and all the parks were closed. Everything was closed, so we would literally look for abandoned parking lots to take them.
It's true, though. I mean, they're again 2 and 4 years old, so we would have to take them out twice a day. Find a place where they could run. And we would look for abandoned fields, and we would just stop and we would get out with a ball and we would just like run around just so they could burn energy because they had to. And we're some of the fortunate ones. I think about some of the people that are homeschooling and they have to sit the kids in front of the computer for a certain amount of time a day. I mean, it's COVID and kids. It's been a very difficult thing. Very, very difficult. I go on them, you know.
The 2 boys becoming closer because they couldn't see their friends. They just had each other. So how did their relationship change?
They're still like young enough to where they don't really have a social circle yet. Like they don't even remember their friends' names that they were just playing with at school.
I don't have the time either. It's fine.
I was really grateful that they had. I mean, I'm grateful for them that they had each other. For me, it was a nightmare. But for them, I mean, we eventually went up to my sister's place in Northern California. She's in like Mount Shasta area because at least there was like mountain trails open, and so we could just go get them, exercise there. But
I will say a funny story though about Tony. Like the preschool sends these pictures and of them throughout their day, and there's this one picture of Tony. He's sitting next to this girl and they're creating this project, and then I saw another picture from a different day and he's sitting next to this girl as well. So I spot this girl and I'm like already like, okay, who's this chick and what is she moving in on my kid? But I laughed and I said to Tony, I said, okay, come on here. I said, who is this girl in this photo? And I literally pick up a picture, show him a picture of him sitting next to a girl, and he says to me, I don't know her. I mean, it was almost like he was channeling his high school self, because I'm showing him a picture of him with a girl, and he's going to me, I don't know her. I've never met her. I don't know her. I'm like, you're doing a project with her. It's like, I don't know her. So
the Mariah Carey.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions for them?
I don't actually think if anybody would like to throw out a question,
Yeah,
a question I'm going to pose to Chris. Chris, you're one of the few locals we've really had on the show, despite you living in LA. So
from Port Jervis, New York. Yep.
Yeah. So what was it like growing up as a gay kid in Port Jervis?
It was tough, to be honest. I'm 53. So when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of I didn't see a lot of it on television. I didn't really feel like I had a lot of role models. I was definitely a kid that was bullied growing up. I was an effeminate kid. There was this moment I always say it was like I showed up for 5th grade and suddenly I was a sissy. Like something happened over the summer. It was like my voice changed and the way I walked, and it was for real. It was for real. Like I would pick up the phone and people would think I was my mother, all the time. I would pick up the phone and I would go, hello, and they would go, Marlene, and I would go, no. And it was like people that should have known better, like my father, So it was for real. And so this started to be pointed out to me by everybody, and it's a real football town. It was a real sports town at that time. So I really kind of felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. At the time, people weren't politically correct like they are now. I have a lot of report cards where teachers wrote on my report card, he needs more friends that are boys. He spends too much time talking to girls. And it was, you would never get away with that today. It's funny, at Tony's preschool, they have all these costumes and there's this one boy that's always walking around in a tutu. And I think to myself, God love it. That never would have existed when I was growing up. So it was tough, but I don't want to rag on Port Jervis because I really had it good. My mom owned the San Diego sub shop in downtown Los Angeles or downtown Port Jervis for 23 years. I loved growing up on Catherine Street where I grew up. My best friend, Richard, Steven's husband, lived 2 doors down from me, another gay boy. We didn't know it. We didn't know it at the time, but we had each other, and that was great. So there was a lot of good, but it was tough. I didn't have a lot of role models, and I was definitely it was spotted if you got it. People were telling me all the time I was gay, and I didn't know how to respond to that because I didn't even understand it myself yet. So that was tough. But Port Jervis itself, I love Port Jervis. I love how beautiful it is. I love now living in Los Angeles. I miss that small town sort of vibe. I love going back and seeing my mom. I love going to Len and Joe's. I love going to
Joe's is great. The best in the world, the whole country.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been able to take the boys there yet because of everything that's been going on in the world, but I can't wait to take them. I'm super excited to take them. So
Very, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, I've never really told you about this, but your story as growing up, and I think it doesn't necessarily matter where you were from, but growing up as a gay, slightly effeminate person who could get mistaken for a female. I remember calling in pizzas and people saying yes, ma'am, and things like that.
Yeah.
Growing up with the same issues.
It's a lot of people's story.
Different eras, different locations, but
yeah.
Compared to now and how your boys are growing up and being raised and who their friends are in school and the other parents that it's easier, it's more tolerant. But again, you're in the LA area,
Right.
When you get to small town USA and you're the kid that doesn't fit in, that quote unquote effeminate is the word you use, you're a target of bullying. And it's something we all know is still going on all over.
It's tough. It's tough. It's tough being a kid anyway. I just think that kids are really tough on other kids. We're just doing our best. Like we tell them all the time, like, just be kind. You don't have to be friends with everybody, but you have to be kind to everybody. You don't have to run for mayor, but you have to be kind to everybody. You have to be nice to everybody. And, you hope that you do. You hope that is what the values that you're instilling on them. But yeah, growing up, it was tough growing up. And at the same time, looking at what my own kids have been through now, my life was a cakewalk. It was pretty easy. Bullying is always bad on any level, but it made me tougher as well. It made me very resourceful. I was very good at I got out and found ways to be around gay people very quickly, and even like, my friend Richard, who I'm talking about, Steven's husband, we didn't talk about being gay. We didn't necessarily know we were gay when we were like in elementary school, but we found each other. We just sort of intuitively found each other. And, other kids were playing football and we were, having weddings for our stuffed animals. So we were,
I love that.
We were pretty gay, but we didn't know it, but we were. Yeah.
I just love that.
Absolutely. So guys, as we come near the end of our show, I mean, are there any last thoughts from you guys?
Yeah.
Anything that, in kind of our conversation that we've missed or haven't touched on, or
anything you want to share with people out there? It will be on YouTube, which means anyone can tune in anytime, anywhere in the world, and you certainly had a lot of great stuff to say tonight. What would you like to tell people?
I mean, I would just, and then I'll let Jesse talk. I mean, again, I'd like to just say, like, as far as foster to adopt, I really want to give that a plug and just say that I know it's not for everybody emotionally, but at the same time, there's so many wonderful, amazing kids. If you're a person who wants to be a parent, even a single parent, I would definitely look into it. Right now, both of us, we're just trying to we're both getting our own projects up and running. I'm writing, I have a play that I've written. I have I teach storytelling at the jail downtown when COVID is in existence. I'm writing essays that I'm putting out there. Jesse's put together something that he'll tell you about in a minute. But, we just want everybody, we just wish for everybody to, get through this, and all of us to, do what we need to do on election day, which is vote, and just, do our thing and just be kind to everybody.
Did you tell me you're undecided?
No, don't even joke. Everybody knows. Like, I'm not going to say that. Just vote. Just vote.
What was I? What am I?
Talk about what you've got going on. Just there's a major project going on.
What you want to share with people?
Oh, it's time for me to plug stuff.
Yeah.
No, actually, on November 15th, I'm officially launching my new project, which is the Fed Collective, like the Fed soul, the Fed stomach, the Fed everything. So It's a lifestyle hub. It's a holistic lifestyle hub, and it features harm-free recipes. It features like guided meditations. It's a publication, so we have interviews with really interesting people, influencers, celebrities, and there's a store attached to it. We have an e-commerce store, an online store, and so. Oh yeah, it's really cool. And I've curated a collection personally, and my professional background is I'm a lifestyle expert. So I'm a chef and I was a fitness professional for years. And so I've helped people in that regard. Like I've worked with really cool people and created, like healthy living programs for them. I've taught meditation. I've done a lot of stuff. So I'm taking everything that I've sort of learned from those experiences, and now that the kids are actually going to school, I can actually do something creative again, and I'm allowing that all to kind of like come out in this one thing. So check out, we just did a very soft launch of our store because we're working out all the kinks and everything, but thefedcollective.com.
Okay, yeah. Steven's putting it into the chat so people will be able to find it. That's just terrific.
Yeah, so I'm excited by the
creative process.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry?
The kids have really helped your creative process.
They've certainly have expanded my perspective. Expanded my perspective. So, I just feel like without the tools that we had both learned, being just really, I think that we're both mindful men. Being sober adds a level of that to our practice. But, being a spiritual teacher for so long and teaching meditation, that was a real foundation of our sort of our mental health, emotional health, spiritual health practices. And it really helped us get through everything. Because without those tools, like, I will say, like, such as life, quarantining with children, I had moments where, like, I was pushed so to my edge because just everything was so uncertain, and we were stuck in the house and we couldn't leave and all of this stuff. And I was like, I understand child abuse. Like, I understand it. Like, if I didn't have the tools that I have, if I didn't know how to like pause, if I didn't know how to like breathe and leave the room and all that stuff, I'm like, I completely like. There's all these reports how like child abuse cases have gone up since people have had quarantine, spousal abuse, all those things, and I'm like, yeah, I can totally see how that happens. But thank God that we have these sort of like healthy lifestyle tools that we can use. And so, part of what we've always done is we've always like, I can't keep a secret. If I find something that inspires me, I have to share it. And so that's what the Fed Collective is. It is just like tools that have really worked for me, tools that I find, like I lost 30 pounds doing a plant-based diet. And so there's all these really great plant-based recipes and things like that. And
the Fed Collective.
Yeah. So check it out.
I'll just say in closing too that there was nothing like you guys when I was growing up. So that's part of why we agreed to do this today, even though we've got the kids in the background and it's not always the easiest thing. Is that I love being from the tri-state area, and when I was growing up, there wasn't anything like this show. There wasn't anything like TriVersity. So we're happy to be a part of that, and anybody can contact us via email or whatever.
It's a phone number coming next.
If anybody has a question, you can contact me about like being a parent. If you have questions about being a gay dad, anything like that, we're happy to help anybody in that.
And if anybody has those questions, they can relay them to us at TriVersity, and we can get them to you. And
better.
I want to read this comment. You two are such wonderful people and a fine example of love. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. That's good.
And we're also just very tired.
Was that my mother?
Just burnt, right? Thank you for being with us tonight, for doing the show, for taking all of this incredible information and who you are as people and sharing it with everyone out there.
And thank you to everyone who watched tonight.
And I want to thank you because Stephen and Richard are friends of yours, and talked about you endlessly, and we got to meet you, Chris, when we did the readings, and it's all great. You know, it really is about sharing the love at the end of the day and being kind.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. We're honored.
And good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.